My daughter smiled while I lost my home. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, she didn't beg. She just smiled, as if she had won something she didn't deserve. I stood on the gravel driveway, my hands clutching the doorframe, staring at the house that had held decades of memories. Every board, every nail, every corner of that land had been mine and my late husband's, carefully built over a lifetime. And now, it was gone. It began quietly, in the way betrayal often does. One afternoon, I came home from a routine doctor's appointment to find my suitcases on the driveway and the locks on my own house changed. My heart sank, but I refused to crumble. I had raised a daughter I trusted, and now that trust had been turned against me. She had stripped away my authority, my legacy, and the place I had given everything to protect. And all she offered was that cold, confident smile. She thought I was weak, and she was about to learn just how wrong she was. At that moment, standing alone with the wind brushing across my face, I made a single decision that would change everything. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't plead. I wouldn't retreat. Instead, I began planning a path that would restore balance and reclaim what was mine. Not just the land, but every ounce of dignity that had been stolen from me. The details of that journey aren't for sharing all at once, because the steps from that driveway to the moment of justice are a story that must unfold carefully. If you ignore this story, you might miss the warning signs in your own life. Someone close to you could be planning the same betrayal, and you wouldn't even know it. Don't let that happen. Subscribe now and witness every moment of how I turned the tables when all seemed lost. We've all faced moments when someone we trusted most seems to turn against us. Perhaps it was a friend, a coworker, or even a family member. The shock, the disbelief, the sudden feeling of your life being upended, that's exactly what happened to me. And if you stay with me through this story, you'll see how a woman who seemed powerless at first can rise, step by step, to reclaim everything that was taken, proving that underestimating a determined grandmother is the gravest mistake anyone can make. I spent more than 60 years building a life that, I believed, would leave a mark for generations. From the moment I married Henry Langley, I poured every ounce of myself into Vance's Heritage Farm, a sprawling 300-acre piece of land in the rolling hills of Virginia. It wasn't just property, it was our life's work, a place where every sunrise over the pastures reminded me of commitment, hard work, and family. I rose before dawn, tended the fields, fed the livestock, and kept the farmhouse running with care that only someone who loved every brick and tree could give. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it for love, for pride, and for the hope that one day, my efforts would be a foundation for my daughter, Sloane. Sloane was always the golden child. From the moment she took her first steps, she carried herself with a confidence I mistook for innocence. Teachers praised her, neighbors admired her, and I, like any mother, saw only the best. I celebrated her victories as if they were my own and quietly tucked away the disappointments she never shared, believing that shielding her from every hardship was my duty. I worked tirelessly so she could have opportunities one never dreamed of. A college education, trips to the city, experiences beyond the farm that I knew could broaden her mind. I believed that love was measured in sacrifices, and I gave them freely, never questioning whether the heart I nurtured might one day turn against me. Those early years were full of warmth. Our mornings were filled with laughter as we collected eggs or walked along the creek behind the farmhouse. In the evenings, Sloane and I shared stories over mugs of cocoa, our fingers sticky from jam we'd made together. There were moments when her eyes sparkled with genuine joy, moments when she clung to my hand, and I felt a pride so deep I thought it could never fade. Every hug, every whispered "I love you, Mama," convinced me that the bond we shared was unbreakable. But life has a way of revealing truths slowly, often in ways you fail to see until it's too late. Sloane changed the day she brought her husband, Vance, home from the city. The warmth in her smile had a new edge, one that I didn't recognize at first. She spoke in a polite, almost rehearsed tone, explaining how the paperwork for the farm had become too complicated for me to handle. She suggested a trust, a way to protect the farm while I enjoyed my retirement, and I believed her. I carried her for 9 months, nurtured her for 20 years, and all I asked for in return was honesty. I trusted that the love we shared would protect what I had built. The shift was subtle at first. Conversations felt lighter but hollow, smiles polite but measured. She complimented my cooking with the faintest hint of condescension. She visited less often, citing work or her social calendar. And when she did, her presence brought a strange tension, as if she were performing a role I had no idea existed. The child I had raised with care, the girl whose victories I had celebrated, now carried herself with a confidence that hid her intentions. I didn't yet know the full weight of her ambition, but I could feel a coldness creeping into the spaces where warmth once lived. I watched her from the farmhouse windows one afternoon, seeing her greet me with that sharp, careful smile while her eyes flickered toward the ledger on the kitchen table. She was calculating, and I realized that the trust one had freely given might be treated as an opportunity rather than a bond. That realization hurt more than any loss could, because it cut through every memory I had treasured, every sacrifice I had made, and every belief I held about love and loyalty. If you've trusted family blindly, comment I understand. It's a feeling that doesn't fade easily. The moment you see someone you've loved most step across a line you never thought they would. And as I stood there, watching Sloane's face, I knew that line had been crossed, and the journey ahead would test every ounce of patience, courage, and resolve I had built in my 68 years. I remember the day the papers arrived like it was yesterday. The envelopes were crisp, professional, and smelled faintly of new ink, a scent that, at the time, I associated with progress, with security. Sloane had convinced me that it was all for my benefit. "Mama," she said, her voice soft and rehearsed, "this is just to make things easier for you. You won't have to worry about taxes, zoning, or legal matters anymore. We'll take care of everything, and you can just enjoy your retirement." Her words sounded kind, but there was a subtle pressure beneath them, the kind you don't recognize until it's too late. She pointed to a pile of documents on the kitchen counter, each page filled with legal jargon I didn't have time to read line by line. I'd spent my life running a farm, not law offices, and she knew it. She smiled and patted my hand, those perfectly manicured nails pressing into my skin like a reminder that I should trust her judgment. "I just want what's best for you, Mama," she said. And in that moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the daughter I had nurtured, raised, and sacrificed for would act out of love rather than ambition. I wanted to believe that all the years I had invested, all the mornings and evenings spent on this land, would be honored. But beneath her calm exterior, there was a subtle manipulation at play. She had studied me as carefully as she had studied her target audience in the city. She knew my weaknesses, my desire to trust, my tendency to see the good in people, my fear of conflict. Every phrase was chosen to lull me into agreement. Every smile and reassuring touch was designed to make me believe I was making a choice that served me. And in truth, I was making a choice, but it was serving her. I sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight streaming through the window, and began signing each page. I told myself that I was doing this to protect the farm, to safeguard it for the future. I didn't pause to consider the implications. I didn't ask the hard questions. And as I placed the final signature, I believed I was securing my legacy. I was wrong. Within days, the so-called family trust became something entirely different, a legal shell for Sloane's ambitions. The north pasture was sold to a landfill corporation, the south woods to a developer building a strip mall. And when I confronted her, standing in the very kitchen where I had signed away my power, she didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't hesitate. She simply smiled that same confident, cold smile and said, "Nostalgia doesn't pay property taxes, Mema." That smile felt like a knife sliding into every memory I had cherished. She had weaponized my trust, turned it into leverage, and left me powerless in my own home. The house, the land, the very life I had built, it was no longer mine. And yet, in that moment, I realized something else. I still had one thing she didn't count on. I had knowledge, and I had patience. I remembered the lessons my father taught me. Observe first, act second. And as I walked away from the kitchen, my heart pounding and my hands trembling, I made a decision. I would not let this go unnoticed. I would not let my life's work vanish without a fight. And I would ensure that when the truth surfaced, the world would see her for what she truly was. This happens more than you think. People you trust can manipulate, deceive, and take advantage without a single outward sign. Don't be blind to the warning signs. Subscribe to stay aware. Because if someone like Sloane can exploit the very people who love her most, the consequences for the unaware can be devastating. The power imbalance was clear. I had been a mother, a caretaker, a farmer, a protector, and in an instant, all of that seemed to evaporate. Yet in that very imbalance lay the seed of my plan. I had been underestimated. I had been dismissed. And that, as I would soon show, was the gravest mistake she could have made. The morning I returned from a routine appointment, I realized just how deep Sloane's betrayal ran. The driveway was empty, save for my suitcases and a single, folded note resting on the gravel. My hands shook as I picked it up. The words were polite, almost casual. We've secured you a lovely room at the Willows. All the arrangements are made. Enjoy your new chapter. There was no warmth, no remorse, no acknowledgement of the life she had taken from me. She had turned my home into a stranger's space, my memories into strangers' stories, and my trust into currency she could spend however she pleased. As I walked up the gravel path to what had been the front door of my house, I noticed the signs first. The north pasture, where I had planted apple orchards with Henry, was no longer the gentle rolling green the first remembered. The land had been leveled, heavy machinery scarring the soil. A chain-link fence surrounded it, with a placard announcing a future landfill. My heart sank. I had known greed could take property, but I hadn't imagined it could destroy the very essence of a family's legacy. Then I turned my gaze south, toward the woods where the deer and foxes had found shelter. The thick, protective trees had been cleared to make way for a strip mall, cranes towering above what had once been sanctuary. I stood frozen, the wind carrying the faint smell of diesel and fresh-cut timber, and felt a wave of moral outrage I could hardly contain. My daughter, the girl I had nurtured, had not only stripped me of my home, she had put the land, the water, and the entire community at risk. Beneath the surface of her transactions was a darker reality. The north pasture contained an underground spring, one that fed the secondary water table for our entire valley. I had watched that water bubble up every spring for 50 years. And now, Sloane's falsified environmental reports claimed it was dry. The landfill company, bribed by her husband, would deposit waste over a source of life itself. She hadn't just sold land. She had placed poison where there had once been sustenance. When I confronted her, I stood in the empty kitchen of what was once my home. My voice was firm, though my hands trembled with both anger and disbelief. "Sloane, what have you done?" I asked, the words barely carrying over the hum of the air conditioning. Her eyes were sharp, her smile that same cold mask I had come to recognize. "Mema, sentiment doesn't pay property taxes," she said, as though that excused the entire devastation. The sheer audacity, the cruelty hidden behind civility, struck me like a physical blow. The locks had been changed, the keys were gone, and I was officially locked out. Every step I had taken to nurture and protect the farm, the hours spent repairing fences, the nights keeping vigil over sick animals, the days managing harvests, had been erased in an instant. And yet, it wasn't just the loss of a home that shook me. It was the deliberate disregard for life itself. The water, the wildlife, the community's safety. Sloane had gambled all of it for profit, and she had used my name as a shield in case anyone questioned her actions. I walked slowly around the perimeter, letting my eyes take in every sign of destruction. The apple trees I had planted with Henry, now reduced to stumps. The creek where we used to dip our toes on hot summer afternoons, now choked with construction debris. My chest tightened with fury and disbelief. How could the girl I had raised, my own daughter, betray not just me, but the land, the animals, and the people who had trusted her family for generations? And yet, in that moment of outrage, I felt something else stir inside me. I may have been evicted, but I was not defeated. I may have lost the land temporarily, but I had not lost my mind, my knowledge, or my resolve. Every misstep Sloane made, Every unethical decision she had taken was a thread I could follow. And follow it I would. This was more than eviction. It was a lesson in underestimation. She had assumed that because I was older, because I had been cast aside, I could not retaliate. She had thought I would crumble quietly. But Martha Langley had lived long enough to know that power isn't always measured by possession. It's measured by understanding, patience, and timing. And in the weeks ahead, Sloane would learn that lesson the hardest way possible. The Willows. Even the name sounded gentle, almost comforting, but the reality was far from it. I arrived to beige walls, squeaky floors, and the faint, persistent scent of antiseptic mixed with stale coffee. It was a place meant to quiet those who had outlived their usefulness, a neutral ground designed to make you small. The staff were polite but distant, the residents polite but resigned. Everyone moved at a rhythm that seemed to discourage thought, curiosity, or ambition. It was the perfect place to hide someone, and that's exactly how Sloane had intended it. At first, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. My home was gone. The farm I had nurtured all my life ripped from my hands. The north pasture threatened with toxic waste. The woods sold off for a strip mall. The locks changed. Everything I had built, everything I had cared for, seemed to vanish in a single day. I was just another old woman here, or so Sloane believed. She had underestimated me, and that would be her greatest mistake. I quickly realized, though, that the Willows was not the prison she intended it to be. Yes, it limited mobility. Yes, it enforced routines. But it also offered time. The one thing I had been denied during years of endless labor and vigilance. While Sloane celebrated her victories, I could plan. While she flaunted wealth and status, I could observe. The staff, in their complacency, gave me access to tools and information I hadn't had in years. Computers, shared files, and yes, even a printer in the administrative office capable of handling massive documents. I spent my mornings walking the hallways, pretending to shuffle aimlessly. But in reality, my mind was active, sharp, and deliberate. I revisited old farm ledgers stored digitally, scrutinized every transfer, every transaction, every signature Sloane and her husband had made. And I began to see the cracks, the patterns of greed, the negligence, the lies that could unravel her empire if handled correctly. I was invisible, and that invisibility was my greatest asset. Sloane believed that my age and displacement rendered me powerless. She believed that a woman in her late 60s, confined to a modest room with beige walls and routine meals, couldn't mount a challenge. She thought the fire had been extinguished. She was wrong. Power isn't only in property or status, it's in knowledge, timing, and leverage. And in that quiet, beige-walled facility, I began to reset the balance. Every day, I cultivated allies without drawing attention. Caleb, the young nurse's assistant with a heart for fairness, became my eyes and hands. He would deliver files under the guise of helping me with trivial tasks, but in truth, we were gathering evidence, preparing for the moment when the scales would tip back in my favor. And then there were the visitors, the women from the local garden club, the neighbors who once shared my life. They brought kindness, sure, but they also carried ears and influence. I shared confidences in whispers, planting seeds of awareness that would quietly spread through the community. Being underestimated gave me freedom. I could watch Sloane's empire stretch beyond the farm while I collected the threads she had ignored. Every misstep she made, every bribe, every falsified report, every overreach, became part of my strategy. She was blind to the fact that I had been watching, learning, and quietly mobilizing. The Willows had been meant to silence me, but instead, it became the perfect vantage point. I discovered something crucial in those first weeks. Anger is fleeting, but calculated patience is enduring. I allowed myself to feel the sting of betrayal, to taste the bitterness of eviction, but I never allowed it to cloud my judgment. Every file I printed, every ledger I analyzed, every conversation I orchestrated through Caleb was a step toward reclaiming control. My life had been upended, my home taken, but the game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. And in the quiet, under the fluorescent hum of the Willows, I understood the truth that Sloane had forgotten. Underestimating someone who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. Because when a person like me is dismissed, they have the time, the clarity, and the resolve to plan a comeback that no one sees coming. Sloane thought she had buried me at the Willows, tucked me away where I could do no harm. She believed that a woman in her late 60s, confined to a room with beige walls and routine meals, could not challenge her schemes. That was her first mistake. Before I was a farm wife, before I spent decades tending the land, I had spent 15 years as the head bookkeeper for the county's largest construction firm. I knew ledgers, audits, and financial loopholes better than most adults knew their own children's birthdays. Numbers don't lie, or, at least, the trail they leave rarely does. Sitting in that dimly lit media room, the glow of the computer screen reflecting in my glasses, I began tracing the flow of money that Sloane thought was hidden. At first glance, everything seemed tidy. Trust funds, transfers, property sales. But I knew where to look. I knew which patterns were abnormal, which accounts were irregular, and which signatures carried subtle inconsistencies. It didn't take long before I found the first clue. An offshore account in the Cayman Islands, opened using my name as a secondary beneficiary. A move so audacious that it could have landed me in jail if the authorities investigated, while Sloane walked free with millions. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. My own daughter had weaponized my name, attempting to use me as a shield for her crimes. But I didn't panic. I smiled. Because while she had the money, I had the knowledge, and the patience to untangle the web she had spun. Every entry in those digital ledgers told a story. Bribes to the county commissioner, falsified environmental reports, suspicious transfers timed around the property sales. Each figure, each note, each timestamp revealed not just greed, but deliberate criminality. Access was easier than she imagined. She hadn't changed the passwords on our shared accounts, the ones we used for farm finances before the trust. She assumed I had been broken, intimidated, or too frail to care. That oversight would be her undoing. I logged in quietly, carefully documenting every irregularity, saving PDFs and printing reports. Each page, each screenshot, each record became ammunition for the battle I was about to wage. As the days passed, I uncovered more. The landfill permit for the North Pasture wasn't just a normal transaction. It had been fast-tracked through bribery. The strip mall developers had received falsified environmental assessments, reporting the underground spring on our property as dry when I had seen that water bubble up every year for decades. The letters of approval, the signatures, the seemingly benign correspondence, all of it was a carefully constructed facade. And in that facade, there were cracks, openings I could exploit. I wasn't working alone, though Sloane assumed otherwise. Caleb, the young nurse's assistant, had become my silent partner. He understood enough about digital systems to help me retrieve documents, scan files, and transport information discreetly. Every walk we took under the guise of fresh air was an opportunity to move evidence without alerting staff or other residents. And every interaction with visitors, neighbors, and local contacts allowed me to test the waters, to understand how much of Sloane's reputation I could damage once the right moment arrived. The more I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a matter of stolen land or personal betrayal. This was criminal. Fraud, bribery, falsification, and conspiracy to defraud the county. And Sloane had done it all with a confidence born of underestimating me. She believed that a woman her own mother, confined to a facility for the elderly, could never wield such knowledge. She was about to learn the hard way that patience, intelligence, and experience are as potent as wealth, and far harder to dismiss. By the end of the second week, I had compiled a dossier that left no room for doubt. Every transaction, every falsified report, every bribe was documented. And yet, I didn't act immediately. That would have been foolish. Instead, I orchestrated a slow, quiet build-up. Investors would see evidence first, community members would hear hints, and Sloane's allies would begin to question her integrity, all before the full exposure. It was a siege built on precision, patience, and the single truth that she had ignored. Martha Langley was not powerless. Through the dim light of that media room, I felt the thrill of control return. For the first time since being evicted, I wasn't a victim. I was a strategist, a force gathering strength while the world assumed I had none. And when the day came to strike, there would be no warnings, no second chances. Sloane's golden child facade would crumble, replaced by the reality that those who underestimate their mothers often pay the highest price. Once I understood what Sloane had approved for that land, revenge stopped being a personal desire and became a necessity. This was no longer about a mother wronged by her child. It was about an entire valley placed in danger by greed wearing a respectable face. The North Pasture wasn't just empty ground to be sold off. It sat above an underground spring that fed wells across 3 neighboring properties, including the elementary school and the small medical clinic down the road. I had watched that water surface every spring for 50 years. I had tested it myself during drought seasons. I knew its path the way some people know the lines on their hands. Sloane's paperwork said the spring didn't exist. Her environmental report stated the soil was stable, sealed, and safe for waste containment. That lie alone could poison thousands of people slowly, quietly, without warning. Landfills don't announce themselves when something leaks. They don't ask permission before chemicals sink into groundwater. By the time symptoms appear, the damage is already done. Children would drink that water. Pregnant women would cook with it. Elderly neighbors would bathe in it. And the ones responsible would claim ignorance and move on. That was the moment I stopped feeling conflicted. I thought about the Thorne family's well, the same one Beatrice used to draw water for her rose garden. I thought about the Miller boy who played near the creek every summer. I thought about the farmhands who had worked our land for decades and trusted that soil with their livelihoods. Sloane had gambled all of that for a faster permit and a larger payout. She didn't just betray me. She betrayed everyone who believed in her polished speeches about progress and development. The realization settled heavily, but it also clarified everything. What I was planning was not cruelty. It was prevention. It was protection. If I stayed silent, I would be complicit. If I accepted my displacement and faded quietly into a state-run room, I would be allowing a crime to unfold in slow motion. My conscience would not survive that, even if my body did. People like to talk about forgiveness as if it is always noble. They rarely talk about responsibility. Sloane had crossed a line where forgiveness would have meant surrendering innocent people to harm. I wasn't raised to do that. My parents taught me that land carries memory, that water carries consequence, and that silence can be as destructive as action. I had lived by those rules my entire life. I wasn't about to abandon them now. As I gathered the reports and cross-referenced them with independent environmental data, the pattern became undeniable. The falsifications were deliberate, repeated, and designed to survive only until construction began. Once the landfill was operational, any challenge would be dismissed as too late, too expensive, or too disruptive. That was the strategy. Delay accountability until damage becomes permanent. That knowledge hardened me. This wasn't revenge fueled by rage. It was justice fueled by obligation. Sloane had forced my hand the moment she chose profit over safety. The moment she smiled while signing away land that did not belong to her in spirit or in truth. The moment she assumed her own mother was disposable. I understood then why she had to be stopped publicly, decisively, and without room for escape. Quiet solutions would be buried. Private confrontations would be denied. Only exposure could halt what she had set in motion. Only pressure from the community, from investors, from authorities who could not look away, would shut the project down before the first truck arrived. I wasn't acting out of spite. I was acting because no one else knew what I knew, and no one else had the proof. The land trusted me. The people trusted me, even if they didn't realize it yet. And when you are the last line between harm and safety, you don't get the luxury of hesitation. Sloane believed she had changed the balance of power when she locked me out of my own home. She never considered that by doing so, she freed me from restraint. She turned a grieving, displaced woman into a witness with nothing left to protect but the truth. And once that truth was fully exposed, there would be no going back, for her, or for anyone who helped her poison the ground beneath our feet. While Sloane thought she was riding high, celebrating every ribbon-cutting ceremony and every toast to her success. I was quietly building a web she could never anticipate. The willows had given me more than time. It had given me invisibility, the perfect cover to orchestrate a slow, steady unraveling of her carefully constructed empire. Every piece of evidence I had compiled, the falsified environmental reports, the offshore accounts in my name, the bribes to Commissioner Holloway, was a tool I could wield, but I needed allies, subtle and precise, to ensure the dominoes fell exactly as they should. Caleb, the young nurse's assistant, became my right hand. He was trustworthy, eager to help, and clever enough to navigate systems without raising suspicion. Under the guise of helping me with simple administrative tasks, he delivered printouts, scanned confidential documents, and assisted me in sending discrete packages of evidence to select recipients. Every walk we took outside the facility became a mission, every errand a reconnaissance. He understood that this wasn't mischief. It was a strategic operation with a very real goal, exposing the truth. Then there were the women from the garden club, pillars of our small community who had been loyal to me for decades. They had visited out of habit at first, bringing lemon bars and smiles meant to console a displaced neighbor. But I gave them something far more potent, confidences. I whispered my concerns about the water table, the spring, and the potential environmental hazards. I didn't accuse Sloane directly, and I didn't need to. I simply framed my words around worry and responsibility. I'd hate for the Thorne estate's well to be compromised, I murmured to Beatrice one afternoon. It would be such a shame if anyone drank contaminated water without knowing. The seed was planted. Gossip in a small town is a wildfire, and it doesn't take long for embers to catch. Within days, murmurs reached ears that mattered. Neighbors, friends of investors, even distant family members who had stakes in local development projects. The carefully curated image of Sloane, the golden child, began to show cracks. Smiles that once seemed effortless now appeared forced. The aura of control she had cultivated was fraying, thread by thread. Sterling Vance, my late husband's estranged younger brother, became a critical component of my plan. He was a retired investigative journalist who had spent a lifetime dismantling corruption. When Caleb and I discreetly shared the digital ledgers, scanned reports, and recorded evidence of bribery, Sterling's eyes lit up with the familiar fire of righteous indignation. "She's using your name on those offshore accounts, Martha," he said, examining the documents. "If the authorities get wind of this, you could be implicated while she walks free. This has to be exposed carefully." "Then we ensure it doesn't explode in my face," I replied. "We let it fester until every crack is visible, until she's standing on the edge, thinking she's untouchable. Then we act." We orchestrated a slow, strategic leak. Investor packets began appearing anonymously on desks, digital copies of environmental reports showing the spring, photographs of bribes, and ledgers detailing offshore transfers. Each packet was calculated to cause just enough doubt, just enough scrutiny, to make Sloane start questioning whether her golden child image could survive the glare of attention. The reaction was immediate. Questions arose, emails were exchanged, and whispers among board members began to build. The Garden Club, acting as unwitting amplifiers, discussed the situation politely in their weekly gatherings, but their words carried weight. Investors started asking for audits, for meetings, for confirmations of compliance. Sloane's team scrambled to contain the narrative, but they had no idea who was orchestrating the pressure or how thorough the evidence really was. Caleb delivered updates with quiet precision. "They're asking for soil samples from the North Pasture," he whispered one afternoon as we reviewed a new round of inquiries. "The investors want proof of your claims." "Excellent," I said. "That's exactly where we want them, pushing for verification, uncovering every lie she's told." Through it all, Sloane remained blind to the scope of the threat. She called me once, her voice sharp and panicked. "Mama, someone is sabotaging the project. Do you know anything about Sterling being back in town?" "Sterling?" I said, letting a faint tremor creep into my voice. "I haven't seen him in years. Perhaps you should come visit me. We could talk about the farm, the spring, you know, the usual." "I don't have time for your senile rambling," she snapped, then hung up. That call was proof of one thing. She still thought she was in control. She still assumed I was powerless. She didn't realize that every meeting she attended, every investor she placated, every ribbon cutting she celebrated, was feeding into the trap we had set. And so, while she basked in her perceived triumph, we prepared the final act. Every document verified, every whisper spreading, every doubt seeded among the people whose opinions and resources she valued. The pieces were moving into place. The quiet siege was not subtle. It was surgical, precise, and unstoppable. Sloane had underestimated the old woman she had tried to bury. She thought she had silenced Martha Langley. She had no idea that every smile, every polite nod from the garden club, every anonymous packet to the investors, was tightening the web around her. The moment of reckoning was approaching, and there would be no escape. The packets began arriving on Sloane's desk without warning, perfectly timed to create unease. Each one was carefully curated, a digital copy of the environmental report showing the underground spring in the North Pasture, photos of her lavish gifts to Commissioner Holloway, scanned bank statements tracing bribes, and every ledger entry that implicated her in financial misconduct. They were anonymous, but their precision carried a message she could not ignore. Someone knew everything, and the walls she believed protected her were already breached. I watched her reaction from a distance, savoring the initial tremor in her perfectly composed smile. The golden child of Virginia, who had once laughed while I packed my bags, was now frantically attempting to maintain control. Emails flew, phone calls were made, staff members were called to verify the legitimacy of the documents. Each movement was a flicker of panic masked by her rehearsed poise. Sloane called Sterling in desperation, her voice pitched with tension. "Who is doing this? How did they get these reports?" Sterling, calm and measured, replied, "Someone who knows your methods and your weaknesses. The question is, can you fix it before it's too late?" The phrase "too late" began to echo in her mind, and I could almost see it fraying her nerves. It was the psychological warfare I had planned. Panic is an insidious weapon. It clouds judgment, accelerates mistakes, and forces even the most calculated individuals to act impulsively. I didn't need her to fight back directly. I only needed her to falter, to crack under pressure, and she did so spectacularly. Every packet served a purpose beyond documentation. It was a needle in her consciousness. The first made her wary. The second made her defensive. By the third, paranoia had set in. She began questioning her closest allies, second-guessing every decision, doubting the loyalty of her husband, Vance, and wondering if every handshake concealed betrayal. And all the while, the community murmured, investors scrutinized, and Sterling guided my moves from behind the scenes. It wasn't cruel, it was necessary. She had placed lives at risk, gambled with water, and endangered an entire town for personal gain. Every anxious glance she threw over her shoulder, every hurried meeting she convened, was evidence that the strategy was working. I had learned that the most potent form of revenge is not brute force, but the slow, inevitable tightening of control over the mind of the adversary. Caleb, ever reliable, helped ensure the delivery of each packet. We never left a trace, no fingerprints, no identifying marks, just undeniable truth. The reports were factual, precise, and damning. We were not fabricating, we were revealing. And the psychological weight of knowing she could be exposed at any moment was more effective than any confrontation I could have staged in person. I could almost hear her internal monologue, frantic and jumbled. Who has access to these files? How did they get the passwords? Could it be my mother? And that was the genius of it. She suspected me, but she couldn't prove it. She couldn't act directly against me without incriminating herself. Fear was now her constant companion, a shadow she could not shake, and it had rendered her vulnerable. As her control slipped, I began nudging her toward errors she could not recover from. Minor missteps in reports, rushed communications, and misplaced trust in allies who were already questioning her decisions. Each miscalculation amplified the panic, and each ripple of anxiety played into the larger strategy. She was dancing exactly as I wanted her to, completely unaware of the orchestrated pattern behind her downfall. This was the turning point. Sloane was no longer the golden child. She was a woman unmoored, her confidence shattered, and her empire teetering. Every call she made, every email she sent, every interaction she attempted was weighed against the fear of exposure. The golden facade she had worn so confidently for years was cracking, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Through it all, I maintained the calm of someone in total control. The willows, the computers, the carefully planned delivery of evidence, everything gave me the upper hand. She didn't see me because she assumed I was powerless, confined, irrelevant. And in that assumption lay her undoing. By the end of the week, Sloane was a shadow of the woman who had once stood on the porch of my home, smiling as she evicted me. Her phone calls were frantic, her meetings chaotic, her trust eroded. She was isolated, anxious, and desperate, exactly where I wanted her. The psychological siege was complete. I had rebuilt the balance, not with confrontation, but with precision, patience, and the relentless pressure of truth she could not escape. And as I watched from my quiet vantage point, the irony was undeniable. The daughter who had thought she could break me had been undone not by force, but by the very knowledge and skill she had dismissed. Sloane's empire was cracking, her golden smile fading, and the moment of reckoning drew nearer with every breath she took in fear. The final piece fell into my lap almost by accident. Sterling had been digging through the last batch of evidence I had collected, cross-referencing dates and transactions, when he found it, a recorded conversation between Vance and Commissioner Holloway. It was brief, just under 5 minutes, but it contained everything: discussions about silencing me, using my name to cover their tracks, and how they planned to dispose of the old lady's claims if I ever made a move. Every word was damning, every pause revealing intention, every laugh from Vance cold and casual, as though plotting my ruin was an everyday matter. I played the recording over and over in that dimly lit media room at the Willows. Each time, the initial surge of fury softened into calculated clarity. This wasn't a moment for anger, it was a moment for strategy. Timing was everything. If I acted too soon, the authorities might dismiss the evidence as coincidence or hearsay. If I acted too late, Sloane's landfill and development projects could be fully operational, making damage control almost impossible. The strike had to be precise, public, and irreversible. I studied the upcoming events. Sloane had the Green Valley Gala scheduled, a black tie affair to celebrate the revitalization of our county. Investors, town officials, and media were all expected. It was the perfect stage, highly visible, impossible to ignore, and full of witnesses who could ensure the authorities took immediate notice. Every step of her plan had been carefully orchestrated to show success. It was also perfectly predictable. That predictability was my leverage. I shared the recording with Sterling, and together, we devised the timing. We would release the evidence at the exact moment Sloane felt untouchable, ensuring maximum psychological impact. It wasn't enough to just present the proof. It had to be undeniable, immediate, and inescapable. There could be no room for denial, no chance for her to manipulate the narrative, no way for her to reassert control. Caleb was integral to the operation. He coordinated the tech elements, setting up the presentation that would display the evidence on the main screens at the gala. All of the reports, images, and recordings had to appear seamlessly, giving no hint of manipulation, no clue that the exposure was orchestrated. It needed to look spontaneous, as if the truth itself had burst forth in the middle of her celebration. I practiced my demeanor in the mirror of my small room at the Willows. Every step had to convey authority without aggression, calmness without fear. I wasn't there to plead, argue, or rage. I was there to present facts, irrefutable facts, and allow their weight to do the work of justice. My dress was chosen for clarity of presence, my voice measured to cut through the hubbub, my expression poised to withstand any attempt at intimidation. I thought about Sloane, pacing her gala schedule, unaware of the storm approaching. Her mind was elsewhere, focused on speeches, photo ops, and the image she wanted to project. I imagined her chest tightening as she glimpsed the first signs of doubt among the attendees. Whispers, sideways glances, questions exchanged over hors d'oeuvres. That tension would escalate when the screens displayed the irrefutable proof. Every person who had trusted her, Every investor who had celebrated her success, every town official who had nodded along in approval, would see the truth at the same time she did. And in that moment, the golden child's confidence would shatter. Her carefully maintained aura of control, the very thing she believed protected her from consequences, would crumble under the weight of her own actions. It was not cruelty. It was inevitability. I had given her countless opportunities to course-correct, to abandon her schemes, to show a shred of morality. She had ignored each one. Now, timing was justice's instrument, and I was its executor. The recording itself was the clincher. It proved intent. It proved malice. It proved that Sloane and Vance had plotted to frame me, to use me as a scapegoat while they profited. Nothing could counteract it, and no lie could survive it once it was public. With that knowledge, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. I wasn't just reclaiming a farm or restoring my dignity. I was preventing harm, enforcing accountability, and demonstrating that betrayal, no matter how intimate, carries consequences. In my mind, I rehearsed the sequence. Walk in confidently, wait for her speech to peak, cue the display, remain composed while the room absorbs the evidence, and let the authorities do the rest. No confrontation beyond stating the facts. Every reaction Sloane could produce, from panic to rage to denial, would serve to reinforce the truth for everyone watching. The timing was perfect. The stage was set. And I was ready. It was not vengeance born of spite. It was the calculated, necessary culmination of years of patience, knowledge, and the understanding that when someone threatens the safety and trust of an entire community, decisive action is not just justified, it is demanded. The night of the Green Valley Gala arrived with the kind of pomp Sloane had dreamed about for years. She stood at the top of her carefully curated stage, draped in a gown that cost more than my first tractor, surrounded by banners showcasing the revitalization of our county. Investors, officials, and local dignitaries filled the historic courthouse, applauding her every word, her every smile. She radiated confidence, convinced that she had outmaneuvered everyone, including me. I did not sneak in. I walked through the front doors with the poise of someone who had nothing to fear and everything to claim. Sterling Vance flanked me on one side, Caleb on the other, both aware of their roles in the unfolding plan. I wore my best pearls and a navy blue suit that whispered authority. Not frailty, not defeat. The audience barely noticed me at first, absorbed in Sloane's speech and the illusion of her control. Then she saw me. The shift in her expression was immediate. Her carefully cultivated mask cracked, revealing the panic beneath. She tried to signal security, but they were distracted by two men in dark suits who had slipped in quietly. State Bureau of Investigation agents, tipped off by Sterling with the final dossier of evidence. I stepped forward to the podium just as Sloane was finishing her remarks about progress and prosperity. Every eye in the room turned toward me. I could feel the collective anticipation, the tension rising as murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Excuse me, darling," I said, my voice carrying clearly, calmly, over the chatter. "I think there's one detail you may have overlooked in your development plan." Sloane's face shifted from triumph to terror, her lips parting in a silent gasp. "Mema, you're mistaken," she hissed. "Someone get her back to the facility." "Oh, I'm not mistaken," I replied, letting my gaze sweep over the crowd, making sure everyone saw the gravity of my words. "I have the original deeds. I have soil samples from the North Pasture proving the underground spring. I have documents showing the offshore accounts in my name, and I have the recording of your conversations planning to frame me and bypass environmental regulations." At that moment, Caleb triggered the screens behind me. Every report, every ledger, every photograph, every word from Vance's recording appeared for the audience to see. Gasps filled the room. Investors muttered in disbelief. Officials exchanged frantic whispers. Sloane lunged toward the laptop, her hands trembling, but it was too late. The evidence was irreversible, visible, undeniable. "Mema," she screamed, voice cracking as the panic overtook her composure. "You can't. This isn't real. I'm your daughter." I remained calm, letting the weight of truth speak for itself. "Sloane, the farm was never yours. The deeds were signed under false pretenses, and the environmental violations are criminal. The accounts you tried to use to frame me? I'm keeping them safe and donating the funds to protect the water you tried to poison. The State Bureau agents moved in, escorting Vance and Sloan out in handcuffs. Their protests fell on deaf ears. The room bore witness to their guilt. Investors demanded explanations, the local media snapped photographs, and the town watched as the golden child of Virginia, once untouchable, crumbled completely. I stood at the podium, taking a deep breath. Silence swept the room as the finality of the situation sank in. No longer could Sloan manipulate perception, charm her way out, or hide behind her status. Every action she had taken, every deception, every lie, had been exposed for all to see. Then, quietly, I looked into the audience and added a word of caution, a reminder to anyone who might be blindly trusting those closest to them. Don't be caught off guard by someone like Sloan. Subscribe before it's too late. The message was simple but essential. Betrayal can come from the people we love most. Awareness is your first line of defense. Just as Sloan underestimated me, others could underestimate the risks in their own lives. A week later, I returned to my porch at Vance's heritage farm. The land was mine again, the water safe, the community informed. Sloan's golden smile had vanished, replaced by the reality of accountability and consequence. I had my home, my dignity, and the knowledge that I had protected the people and land I loved. She had thought she could erase me, dominate me, and rewrite the rules of our family and community. But she had forgotten one critical truth. A mother who has been betrayed and underestimated knows precisely how to strike when the time is right. And as I sipped my tea, watching the hills settle into twilight, I felt the deep, quiet satisfaction that comes not from vengeance alone, but from justice restored, lessons learned, and the balance of power finally returned to where it belonged. After the chaos of the Green Valley Gala, the legal wheels began turning with a speed that even Sloan could not manipulate. I had filed for a rescission of deed 3 days before the gala, citing fraud, coercion, and the misrepresentation of my consent. The judge had reviewed the documents with painstaking attention, the evidence irrefutable. Doctored reports, bribed officials, falsified permits, and my signature obtained under misrepresented pretenses. When the ruling came through, it confirmed everything I had hoped for. The farm was officially restored to me. All properties that had been illicitly sold were tied up in litigation, and the courts moved swiftly to freeze the offshore accounts that had been set up in my name. Every piece of the puzzle Sloan thought she had controlled was now dismantled. She had not just lost power, she had lost the illusion of invincibility. I chose to contact her personally before the authorities completed their final processing. I wanted her to hear it from me first, without the filter of lawyers, agents, or reporters. The call was brief. Her voice, once so sharp, so commanding, now trembled with disbelief and resentment. "You can't do this, Mama," she said, her words laced with desperation. "I'm your daughter. I built my life on this. You can't take it away." I remained calm, measured, letting the weight of my silence speak. When I finally responded, my voice was steady, clear, and unwavering. "Sloan, you built your life on lies. You gambled with people, with land, and with water that sustained a community. You underestimated the person you thought was powerless. The farm was never yours to claim, and every step you took to secure it has unraveled. Not through brute force, not through confrontation, but because the truth always finds its way." There was a pause. I could almost hear her struggling to digest the reality. Then I added, softer this time, yet firm, as a mother correcting a wayward child, "I hope you remember this lesson. Trust is not a weapon, Sloan. Power is not worth losing your humanity over. And never forget, the hands that raised you are the hands that can outmaneuver you when you betray them." That was the last conversation I had with her before the authorities escorted her to face the full legal consequences of her actions. There was no pleading, no bargaining, just the hard, immutable truth, and the undeniable result of her choices. A week later, I returned to my porch at Vance's heritage farm. The hills stretched wide and familiar before me, the silence of twilight settling like a soft blanket over the fields. I held my tea in my hands, the warmth seeping through the porcelain and into my bones. Every sound, from the rustle of leaves to the distant call of a nightbird, carried a sense of permanence that I had feared lost. As I sat, I reflected on the years of labor, love, and dedication that had gone into this land. It was more than a farm. It was a testament to resilience, a record of sacrifice, and a symbol of the life I had fought to protect. Each fence post, each tree, each patch of soil bore witness to the care and commitment that could not be erased by deceit or greed. I thought of Sloane, the golden child who had believed she could rewrite the rules, bend reality, and diminish those who had nurtured her. She had learned, perhaps too late, that there are forces beyond manipulation, powers beyond ego, and consequences that cannot be avoided simply because one feels entitled. Sitting there, I felt a profound satisfaction, not born of vengeance, but of justice served, lessons reinforced, and dignity restored. The farm was mine, the land safe, the legacy preserved. I could watch the sun set over the north pasture without fear, knowing that the spring ran clear and that the work of my lifetime would continue unspoiled. And as the evening deepened, I whispered to myself, not in triumph, but in quiet reflection. Sometimes, to protect what matters most, one must prune the rot and ensure the roots of family and community remain strong. The house, the land, and my own resolve had survived the storm. The balance had been restored. This porch, this land, and this life, earned through patience, strategy, and unwavering determination, were reminders that power, when used wisely, does not intimidate, it endures. And for the first time in what felt like decades, I could breathe fully, unburdened, and completely at peace in the home that was always mine. Sitting on my porch, looking out over Vance's heritage farm, I realized that the story of Sloane's betrayal was more than a personal triumph. It was a blueprint for understanding the importance of boundaries, self-respect, and vigilance. Life had taught me, through pain and deceit, that goodwill without discernment can be a dangerous currency. Love alone, without clarity and awareness, does not guarantee protection. For decades, I had invested everything in my family, my husband, my daughter, and this land. I had believed that trust, nurtured with years of care, would be enough to safeguard what I valued most. And yet, Sloane, the golden child I had raised and adored, had shown me that even the closest bonds can harbor ambition, envy, and cruelty. That truth was painful, yes, but it was also empowering. Understanding that people can disappoint, even betray, is the first step toward protecting oneself. I learned that boundaries are not optional. They are essential. My generosity, patience, and love had been exploited because I had not clearly defined limits, because I had assumed that shared blood and shared history alone would prevent harm. Trust must be earned, monitored, and, at times, reinforced with tangible safeguards, legal, financial, and emotional. Respect for oneself is inseparable from the ability to enforce boundaries. Without it, even the purest intentions can become liabilities. Watching the hills settle into twilight, I thought about the many ways this story might resonate with others. Perhaps there are viewers who, like me, have placed unshakable faith in family, colleagues, or friends, only to have that faith abused. Perhaps someone has felt powerless, watching as greed, manipulation, or deceit threatened everything they held dear. My story serves as both warning and guide. Vigilance, preparation, and self-respect are not betrayals of love. They are expressions of it. Protecting oneself is not selfish. It is necessary. It also became clear that patience and observation are powerful allies. I had spent weeks gathering evidence, building alliances, and timing my actions with precision. Revenge, in the sense of restoring justice and preventing further harm, is not about rash retaliation. It is about calculated action that ensures accountability while minimizing collateral damage. True empowerment comes from combining wisdom, experience, and strategy, knowing when to act and when to wait. Yet, amid all these lessons, the most profound realization was that self-worth is indivisible from dignity. Sloane had sought to diminish me, to erase my contributions, and to humiliate me in front of the community I loved. But in every choice I made, From uncovering the fraud to orchestrating the exposure, I retained control over my own sense of value. No deception, no betrayal, and no external force could take that from me. I looked at my hands, weathered and calloused from years of work, and understood that every sacrifice I had made was not erased by Sloane's greed. Every hour spent nurturing the farm, every moment of love poured into my daughter, every decision made in the service of family and community was part of a foundation no one could dismantle. The farm, my life's work, and my integrity had endured. This story is a reminder. Setting boundaries is not betrayal, vigilance is not cynicism, and self-respect is not negotiable. Protecting what matters most does not make you cold or unkind. It makes you resilient. And sometimes, the harshest lessons are the ones that teach us to value ourselves above the deceit of others, to recognize manipulation, and to reclaim control over our lives with clarity and strength. If this story resonates, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. Perhaps a friend, a family member, or a neighbor has been blind to the warning signs in their own life. Let them see that awareness and action are forms of love, that wisdom often comes through adversity, and that dignity is always worth defending. Because in the end, surviving betrayal is not about revenge alone. It is about learning, growing, and ensuring that your life, your values, and your peace are never compromised again. And as I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of quiet triumph, not over Sloane, not over the events themselves, but over the knowledge that I had emerged stronger, wiser, and unyielding.